My name is Naveen. In this video, we will see about storage in Kubernetes. In Kubernetes, storage can be defined in two ways, either volumes and persistent volumes. Before going into details about these volumes, let's see how data is stored in a container. This is a simple pod and a container inside it. It's a single container pod. And inside the YAML file, the pod configuration is defined. Let's see how data is stored inside a pod. Once the pod is up and running, the container will have a file system. And any data which we create in the container will be stored here. And if there are any issues with the pod will try to restart the container. And once the container is restarted, all the data inside the container is lost. To avoid this kind of data loss, we use volumes in Kubernetes. Let's create a simple pod and see how data is stored inside a container and what happens if we don't use the volumes. This is a YAML definition of a simple pod. I'm using a custom image here, which has a file sample.txt under files folder. And I have defined liveness probe here, which checks for every 10 seconds. And if this file is not located in this folder files, then the probe will fail and it will try to restart the container. In this image, I have defined a cron job which will delete this sample.txt file. Now let's create a pod from this file and I will show how the data is stored inside. Now the pod is running. I'll quickly create some files inside it. Right now we can see sample.txt file. It's under the files folder. I have created a new folder data, and inside that I created a new file hello.txt with the string hello. Now we can see the file sample.txt has been deleted under the files folder. And once this file has been deleted, the container has restarted and I am out of this exec terminal. Now the pod has restarted once again. You can see number of restarts 1. I'll once again go inside the pod. Now I can see the sample.txt file again generated. Now I don't see the folder which we created previously in the last container. So this is the limitation of using container to store the data. We just saw what happens if we create data inside a container. Once the container is restarted, all the data inside it's lost. So we use volumes to prevent this data loss. I'm using a simple pod volume here. In next video, I'll explain about the persistent volumes. This is a single node and I have a pod running on this node, and how volumes are defined is we'll create a storage outside of the pod. The storage type can vary based on the application we are building. So we have created a storage outside the pod and now we will link this storage to the volume. This volume will be defined inside the pod configuration and same volume details will be passed into the container. This is the way how storage is created and how it's linked to the pod. For CKAD exam point of view, we need to know two types of pod volume types. One is empty directory and other is host path. Empty directory is mostly used in a multi-container pod where we need to communicate between one container to the other container. And host path is something like we'll create a folder inside the node and we will link that folder to the container. Now let's see how these two types of volumes are created in the Kubernetes. Right now I am using a single master and a single node. This is a multi-container pod YAML definition. The first image is Nginx and the second image is BusyBox. Volume should be defined under pod specification. So this is the syntax we will define under the pod specification. We will define the volumes and we'll give a name for this volume and the type of volume we are defining. Here I am using empty directory. Once we create a pod from this file, a random directory will be created inside the node where this pod is created. And under each container we need to mount this volume. So this is the syntax definition which we need to create under the containers. Volume mounts followed by the path where this mount will be mounted and the name for this volume mounts. The name under the volume mounts and the name under the volume should be same. Let's create pod from this file. So both the containers are running. We can see 2 of 2. Let's go inside each container and create some data. So we have created a hello.txt file inside one container and we can see the same file in the other container, busybox. So this is the use of empty directory, mostly used in multi-container pod where we need to share data from one container to the other container. And the limitation of using empty directory is that it will be deleted once the pod is deleted. Now let's see how to define a host path volume type. This is the YAML file where I am using Nginx image for this container. The creation of volume will be same. We will create a volume under the pod specifications. So this is the syntax of using a host path volume type. We need to give a name and the type of volume we are using and the path details. Same we need to mount under the container. And this is the syntax under the containers, and we are mounting this path under /data. Now let's create pod from this file. We can see the pod is taking more time to create it. Let's see what's the issue. So here we can see the pod is not able to create because /details folder is not created. Let's see where this pod is getting created. So it's on worker 1. We need to go into worker 1 and see if the details folder is already created or not. So I don't see the folder details here. Let's create that one. And now if you see, the container is running. So the container is created and the pod is running. Let's go inside and create some details. So I have created a file hello.txt under the folder data, and we have mounted this one in details. And now if you go into details and see here, I can see the same text hello.txt. Now let's delete this pod and create it once again. We have already created the details folder, so this time it won't be any issue. Let's go inside and see. We should be able to see the hello.txt file. If you see here, we can see the file which is already created with the previous container. So these are the two types of pod volumes which we need to be aware for CKAD exam. So volume is simply a definition which is created inside a pod. The volume definition inside the pod will use to link the external storage to the container. I hope you understood why we need to create a storage outside of the pod to save the data, just to prevent losing the data. To summarize once again, the data inside a container is temporary. Means once the container is restarted, all the data inside the container will be lost. And to prevent this one, we use volumes. And volume inside a pod is only a definition which is used to link an external storage to the container. I'll explain about persistent volumes in next video. I hope you got something from this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.